right, good afternoon. Very close friend of mine. His father was all set for retirement, had been working 50 years of his life, had everything set up properly, and then his mother gets Alzheimer, early onset, and goes for an extended period of time, like 8 years, and $1.5 million of his retirement later that he had saved up. He was able to, take care of his mother and finally through her remaining days put her to rest. But then at a late age had to rethink retirement because it had all changed. Um, I've got another personal friend in my neighborhood who I hadn't seen in a few weeks, car wise in the driveway, called him up, and he's in Ohio. Mother has dementia. He's taking care of her all by himself, no long-term care plan. Fortunately, he can work remote, but if that was not the case, it'd be a whole nother situation. And of course, obviously mentally and stress-wise, he's having to try to juggle personal life and, take care of his mom. And I've got a client, another good friend of mine I'm working with now, who both parents had long-term care event. His mom cost him 7 grand a month of his personal money to take care of in her final years. His wife, on the other hand, her parents had long-term care planning set up, and it cost her $0 financially, but also stress-wise. She was able to have a caregiver do that and give some support, right? So there's two sides to the tales there. The people that have seen it firsthand, has been a pretty major financial impact. The people that have been proactive, um, although it's never an easy thing to go through, there are some stresses that are brought down, and statistics show a longer lifespan for the ones taking care of their loved ones.
hmm
Well, hello, this is Don,
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
and this is podcast number 215. And today we're talking with Scott Cramblitt, and he's a financial service professional agent with New York Life Insurance. And today we're talking about long-term care insurance, but really about long-term care itself. And so, Scott was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and grew up in Glen Burnie, Maryland, about 15 minutes outside of Baltimore. He attended Virginia Tech from 1997 to 2002, where he received his bachelor degree in business economics. He moved to Charlotte in 2005 and took a position with an automotive industry where, and he stayed here for 18 years. Um, my lovely wife, his lovely, I'm reading, didn't convert this as well as I wanted to. His lovely wife, Jessica, and he has two boys, Nick, 15, and Ben, 12 years old. He enjoys coaching youth sports and having passionate for game of baseball. When not coaching, he enjoys playing golf, throwing ball with his kids, and rescue dogs. His mission is to always been to improve people's lives. From training employees in the past to helping my clients now, I'm able to achieve that same mission. So, well, Scott, thank you for being part of this. And this is something, we talk about this all the time, long-term care and all that. And this is a big part of what people need to do. So I'm really anxious for us to sit down and talk about this.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me on. And I think a big part of it is just education on it.
Sure.
Being I guess there a lot of us are very reactive. A good
hmm
portion of human beings are
hmm
very good at being reactive when they need something. Not so much so being proactive. And I think it's more just one education on things that are available to us
hmm
now, and I guess not necessarily understanding the impacts it has later, and the it's not going to happen to me category, right? So we
hmm
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
we don't
Yeah,
want to talk or think about those things when we're in good health.
yeah, your stories are pretty powerful. The impact of the cost of caring, we talk about caring for aging loved ones. That's been the focus lately of things. And I went through it with my mom and dad. And I actually remember because long-term care insurance hasn't been around a long time. I've been an occupational therapist for 30 years, and I remember at least when we first became aware of it and my mom asking me, and I really didn't know much about it, and I didn't know, does it only cover in a facility, in a skilled nursing facility versus other avenues of care? So, yeah, I still don't know a whole lot about it. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation as for our listeners as well. But yeah, I personally, it's an area that I need more education on.
Absolutely. And you know, you said it the right way. I mean, it's fairly recent, long-term care or places that will fund long-term care agencies. And just a short time ago, even in the last 15 years, there was 20 plus agencies that would offer it. And today, in
Mhm.
just that short period of time, we're down to about eight
Oh,
because the cost of medical care is exponentially rising, and these companies that were, I guess, making a promise weren't able to live up to it because they were a newer company and couldn't outrun the cost of the medical increasing.
wow. Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's yeah, I was going to say, I thought you were going to say, well, it's doubled that or something now, but it's gone the
No,
other
it went the
direction,
other
you know.
way, and it's another important part about this is like when you're going in to a business that offers it, just do some research on the business. Make sure they're going to be around,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I would think New York but would be around for a long time,
We're
you know, with what the, you know.
we've been around 180 years. We've survived the Great Depression, World Wars, you know, uh, the '08 crash, COVID, you name it. We've been through it.
Right.
We're very strong
Yeah.
financially. So we're
That's interesting insight on that. Because, yeah, people are living longer and the cost of that is rising. People don't realize, we can keep people alive till they're 100, but if they need care, um,
yeah, yeah,
it's,
we are living longer. So yes, it's a big need because Mother Nature, we can be here to 100, 110, right? And when's the last time you saw somebody like that was on TV that was 100 that was like running marathons, right? It's just natural gravity and nature just takes into effect. We might be here with our minds, hopefully, but physically that's just part of life.
yeah, it's kind of the exception to have someone who's I work in an independent living community right now, and as a therapist, we do some preventative, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, most of the time, it's someone fell, someone was in the hospital and got sick, and they're weaker. And, when I get someone who's really healthy, it's exciting to see that in someone who's, I met a man in the hallway who was kind of new to the building and just let him know if he needed therapy services. And he's 85. He's like, so far, I'm good.
Nice.
But sometimes people don't realize preventatively, right, what could happen and how strong are you really when something happens, right? If we're young and we fall, we bounce right back up. If we're a young middle adult, we can heal quickly, but as we're older, we don't heal so quickly.
No, no, it happens. I hear it all the time.
Well, as I've read over your bio, there's you went to the automotive industry and didn't say anything about where you went, how you got here. So I was kind of curious as to how you went from that to
Getting
this
into
industry.
insurance, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the change of industry was pretty much time related. It's not just the automotive industry, but when you get high up in a company, in certain industries take a lot of your time. And I was putting in the time and not spending it with my family. And like in a blink of an eye, I had a high schooler and a middle schooler, and I decided to revamp my career to give me more control of my time.
Hmm.
um, to where I can now I'm coaching their sports and I'm being a better dad, I guess is the best way to put it. So that's really what I was looking forward to. In my past career, I helped people all the time that needed a car, wanted a car. Um, Not everybody's in I guess, best financial position to just come in and buy a car. So there's, you got to know the different lenders. There's things that really do help people, right? Um, and I was able to continue, helping people in this industry as well. Um, Today we're obviously talking about long-term care, but there's a whole, litany of things that I'm licensed to do, and everybody's got different needs and wants, and I'm able to help them, achieve their goals, and
Sure.
that's makes you sleep good at night.
Yeah. That's
Well, and you talk about strategy. I want to talk about long-term care, but what's the strategy behind it that because you said you also have other things. Are they all kind of encompassed in this strategy that you set up for people?
Yeah, so when you're looking at just planning for life, right? It starts out when you're young. You might start, your a 401k with your company if they offer it, starting to save for retirement. Then you have a family. You might, want to protect that family with life insurance, right? And then you learn about different investment strategies, whether it be separate IRAs or real estate or business venture. There's a lot you can go into there. We do all this to build for this wonderful life of happiness in the golden years. And but then you also have long-term care planning, which gets skipped over more than not, and the percentages show it should be the other other way around. And I guess the biggest eye opener is, we work for whatever 40, 50 years depending when you start working. I know for me when I was 16 or 15, I forget the
yep.
age you could work, I was out there earning my own dollar, right? So I could spend it on what I wanted. That may change these days, but either way we work a long time to try to set up for retirement,
Hmm.
and everybody thinks it's just going to go how it's supposed to go. We're going to have a lifetime of income and play golf every day or whatever you're into, right? And then an event happens and it totally crushes that. You can avoid that, or you can supplement, avoiding a good portion of that with people like myself educating people on just what to prepare for. Like prepare for the unexpected, right?
Right.
Better to be prepared and not need it than need it and not have it,
Hmm.
because then it's kind of too late to
Yeah.
get it, you know. So it's there's that fine line. So when you're planning in life, I'm registered to do all of that stuff. Um, But a really important topic, as we discussed when we met Don, is long-term care is something that's you know a lot of people have been close to somebody that's either been through it,
Hmm.
right, or you might be, if you're fortunate enough to not have gone through it yourself, somebody who has,
Right.
and they're not exactly like that was a great experience. It's you do it because you feel like you have to, because you want to, because you're taking
Hmm.
care of, in most cases, a loved one. Um, but there's a toll it puts on you, and
Sure.
it's not generally a positive toll.
So we could start with the questions of misconceptions because when I first learned of it, my understanding is it covered if you were in a skilled nursing facility, right? So there's different levels,
Yeah.
there's assisted living, there's other levels of care. And when my parents asked me, I thought, well, it's only going to pay for if you want to go in a nursing home, which is not ideal from someone who's worked there. And if you just want to hire a caregiver or if you go to assisted living versus skilled nursing, then it's not going to pay for it. So I guess correct me with my misconceptions and just talk about the general misconceptions people do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of my answers may answer some other questions you may have had. So feel free to reiterate over top that, oh, that answers the question I had about this. But, some big misconceptions. The first one is I'm never going to need it, right?
Okay.
And the reality behind it is that, you know, most of us will need it eventually, right? The percentage of Americans 65 plus that run into some sort of long-term care event in their remaining years is 70%,
Hmm.
right? So think about that. That means 7 out of 10 people are going to have that event or have an
Mhm.
event that requires long-term care. And yeah, that gives you do you want to be, do you think you're going to be 3 out of the 10? Like, who's the gambler, right? I mean, will it happen? So the biggest misconception is never going to happen with me. I'm the healthiest person in the world. It's not going to happen. Another big misconception is that Medicare is going to pay for everything, right? People think once I get to that, I've paid in, I can't wait. Now, Medicare is great. There's nothing wrong with Medicare, but generally speaking, it does not pay for long-term care coverage. They do have like 100, they do pay up to 100 days in the hospital, which sometimes can be moved over to kind of an assisted living situation. But after day 100, they're done with it, right? Um, so those are kind of the two biggest misconceptions. And then obviously, as you mentioned, you thought it was only for assisted living.
Or no, skilled
Well,
nursing
skilled nursing, right?
versus
So
assisted living. Yeah.
that is not the case. It can be used in so many ways. One, it can be used at home care.
Mm,
It can be
Mm.
used in assisted living. It can be used in skilled nursing, right? If we have to. I know most of us, well, I guess I'm not going to answer for everybody, but I would imagine the majority of people would like to stay at their own, in the
sure.
privacy of their own home as long as
Sure.
possible, right?
Right.
It's
Mm.
where they're comfortable in their bed. Um, long-term care can pay for people to come to the house and help out. It can actually pay for your family members to take care of you, maybe to
Wow.
help supplement them a little bit if they're having to take time off of work, right? And which includes generally loss of income. So, I mean, it can be
Hmm.
used in so many ways.
Are there different plans that only cover certain aspects of that? You know what I mean? Are there plans that only cover if you're in a facility or um, I'm I'm just curious, and I guess you can't speak to other companies per se.
Yeah, I can't speak to other companies, but for New York Life, it's not a kind of one size fits all.
Hmm.
You really get to customize your plan that fits your needs best with a licensed agent, of course.
Hmm.
And with New York Life, all of our long-term care policies include home care and facility care, um, care planning specialists,
Hmm.
right? So you can actually call somebody who can help you plan out what you need.
Hmm.
In-home equipment support. All right.
Hmm.
So you get all of that with every single plan, along with we also have inflation protection options,
Oh, wow.
right? As the cost of care is going up,
Hmm.
you can prepare for that in advance, right? Because as much as we'd like to think everything just goes up incrementally, that is not the case, right? But there are ways to alleviate that.
Right that. Okay.
The way that ours work is most of the time you're creating a plan that generates a pool of money over X amount of time, and you can
Hmm.
kind of use that money as you please as long as it fits within a long-term care event. So it's not necessarily, yes, we want to be at home, right? What
Hmm.
if you can't be? What if an event happens, you're just going right into, you know, assisted living or whatever the situation may be. Well,
Hmm.
at that point, you got to pivot your plan, but your money's still there. So you just appropriate your money differently and
Hmm.
put it to where it needs to go. So
Hmm.
So, if you're thinking about what kind of like questions do you have to do? What do you have to think about with it? Because like you said, it sounds like there are different plans depending on what the situation is. What kind of questions do you ask yourself, or does somebody ask about that they need for this plan?
absolutely. And so there's four basic questions you ask yourself, and then you can get kind of deeper into that. But it's who, where, how, and what. Those are
Okay.
the four things you got to take care of you,
Okay.
right? Um, is it going to be my kids, my family, my friends? Is it going to be a home health aide, uh, registered nurse? Right? So like really like and if who's your contingent I guess caregiver if your kid's not gonna do it, right? Have a written plan, right? Figure out who it's gonna be and really think about it. Don't just like throw it against the wall because you got to get into a deeper conversation with yourself once you answer these four questions, right?
Hmm.
So who's gonna do it? Where is it gonna be done? Right? Am I gonna spend it at my house or at my home? Am I going to go to community or assisted living or skilled nursing home? Like, where do you want it to go? All right. And then once you have that, well, how much is that going to cost? Right. Because they all have different levels of expense. Right. And finally, the most important, or I guess the best part about it is what is the best plan for you? Right. There's no right or wrong answer. Like,
Mhm.
you got to sit down and say, hey, you know, some people might not have kids, so you can't go the kids route,
Hmm.
right? But they might have very close friends or community or another family member if that's the route they're going. Um, or maybe like for instance, I know we're out of the story part, but I've got a neighbor that's kind of in the same industry as me, and she's a single mom, divorced years ago. Her kids are up in high school now, and she got long-term care plan for herself. And she said to me, she's like, look. She's like, it's the prime years for me to do it, and I'm single. I don't know if I'm ever going to meet anybody else. And I certainly don't expect my kids to be able to do it because they're going to be hopefully out in the world making a difference. So I'm not going to have anybody take care of me. So
Hmm.
that's what she thought it through, and her
Wow.
plan is to have somebody else take care of her when she gets there. So however she manipulated her plan to meet her needs, awesome. But she thought about who, where, how much, and what is the best plan for her, and that was it. It right.
Those are powerful questions because we talk all the time about having conversations with loved ones before something happens, about what they want, what their desires are. And that in itself is hard enough for people to start engaging in. They don't want to talk about it.
It's
And
tough,
and then
right?
adding the money factor, that's even a bigger challenge. Because sometimes you don't know what you're going to need. You don't know if in-home care is going to work or, what the options are. My mom went through that with my dad, tried to keep him home as long as possible. He had Parkinson's. He had some back surgeries and he developed dementia with it and advanced dementia. And it got to the point where we were like, okay, this isn't the best for mom, for her to keep doing this. She doesn't want caregivers around the clock in her house. She's getting worn out. It's affecting her health. Now we have to find, the best option for them. Luckily, my dad had lots of money saved. He was a financial planner and he had all kinds of investments. But we don't always know. We might say, oh, I want to stay at home, but that might not be realistic sometimes. So I guess my question is, yeah, how do you plan for that when you really don't know for certain what that will look like?
Yeah, right. And that's why you have to ask yourself who's going to do it, where do I want it, and but you can't just say, oh, my kids, my house, and you're like, all right, so what? That's in a perfect world. All right,
Hmm.
so what happens if the kids aren't here to do it?
Hmm.
Right? What
Hmm.
if they're overseas or what? I mean, there's a bunch of reasons they couldn't be around to do it, but or they just can't physically do it, or they
Hmm.
can't, take the time to do it, whatever the situation may be. Well, what's next, right?
Hmm.
Be prepared. Yeah, I want to do it at my house. I want to be there, but then what happens if you can't?
Hmm.
Where are we talking about next, right? We can't plan for just one thing. We got to plan for a couple things, right? And that's
Hmm.
that's in anything in life, not just long-term care, but that's the tough part. We don't like to think that far down the line. Like the old "it's
Right.
never going to happen to me" creeps in our head, so we don't want to put the time in.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but if you just put, you know, a good, some people it could take them 30 minutes, some people a couple hours, but we're talking even if it's a couple hours over the course of somebody's lifetime to put into thinking about it
Hmm.
can make a world of difference, not only on you, but
Hmm.
the people taking care of you, right? And the burden it puts on them.
Sure. I guess the next thing that popped into my head is, long-term care insurance. You said it's a pool of money that you have to utilize. So how is it different than just investments?
So the difference is with long-term care, they have specialized facilities and everything that you can set up, right? So it's kind of tax deferred growth,
Okay.
right? So it's not really an investment vehicle, but after you've had a plan set up for, and all different companies are different, but and depending on your plan. So I'm going to speak about just one of our plans briefly. We have a bunch of different ones that do a bunch of different things. So please
Hmm.
don't take this as the only plan, but
Sure.
our most popular, I would say, plan, or most cost effective for most, the most bang for the buck, so to speak. Um, After you've had your policy for 10 years, when available, which they've been for over 172 years straight now. We just can't use the guarantee, they can't use the G word guaranteed, but New York Life starts putting dividends into the policy. And what that does is it now requires you can set it up how you want, but now if your premium will start going down. So you'll start paying less, right? And to the point
Hmm.
it's very minimal. So it kind of grows in a tax deferred world, right?
Okay.
And you're not taxed on that money when you use it. So in an investment account, or that's I guess one way to look at it is one question to ask is how could this affect my surviving spouse's retirement,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
if you have an investment account that's supposed to help fund their lifestyle, it could drain that quickly,
Hmm.
right? Because long term, I'll get into that in a little bit. Long term care can get pretty expensive depending on what level you're at.
Hmm.
But if you have an IRA or a 401k, like a retirement plan you're drawing out of, it may require you to take larger distributions.
Hmm.
All right. When you do that, now you have a taxable event because now you have to report a higher income for the year. And in doing so, it could put you in a higher tax bracket, causing you to pay higher taxes in retirement, draining that account even more. Right.
Mm.
So long-term care is a way to put a small portion of money aside to make sure that all the investments, all the growth that you've been accumulating for your
Hmm.
retirement years for both you and your spouse or whatever the situation may be, if you're single, doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you can either drain all your assets to nothing to pay for it, or you can have a plan in place where you spent just a little bit per month, relatively speaking, depending on what type of care you're looking for.
Hmm.
Um, because you can have care that's, basic all the way up to, I'm not trying to advertise for anybody, but a really high quality experience, the Ritz-Carlton experience.
Hmm.
It just depends on the level that people want. But,
Hmm.
you can drain your money you've saved all these years for, or you can protect it by investing in a long-term care plan.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm curious about those 3 out of 10 people who don't need it. One spouse dies, they have this plan, and that other person doesn't need it. What becomes of the money then?
So there's a couple ways that you can set it up. So this is where it kind of gets in the weeds a little bit. I mean, that's why it's very you can customize it, right, for
Sure.
different situations. So there's plans where you can, if one spouse passes away, then that pool of money just now goes over to now they got extra money for themselves
Okay.
for a long-term care event.
Right.
We have plans that's just like a regular, insurance plan, like car insurance, for instance. Hey, I pay
Hmm.
them every month. I never had an accident. Well, that money's just gone, right?
Hmm.
So we have plans like that. You pay a little bit to get a big
Right.
pool of money if something happens, right? It's
Right.
the old risk reward deal. But we also have plans that you pay into that if you get later in life and you realize you don't need it, you get to get your money back.
Hmm.
You can go all the way up to 100% of your premiums, like everything, you get it all back. So you paid into it, um, it grew and got ready for that situation. You realize, oh God, I'm never going to need it. Well, we can go ahead and give you all your money back.
Hmm.
Do whatever you want with it at that point. So yeah, if you're lucky enough to be in one of the three out of
Mm.
10, hey, that's a great option, right? Hey, we hope we get there. Right? That'd be a great position to be in.
Right, right. So, okay, it's good to know there are lots of different options because, yeah, I just think about questions people would ask, and um,
And that's the
yeah.
beauty of it, and that's where the education comes in. That's why you really need to sit down, if whether it's myself or my company or somebody else, but if you're looking at long-term care planning, like sit down with a licensed agent,
Hmm.
go over all the options. You'd be surprised how many really, oh, really? I didn't know that moments you'd have, and you can really
Mhm.
customize it like a la carte to you, your family, your situation, whatever it may be, right? It gives you a great peace of mind to do it your way and put you in control.
Right.
Yeah, I've just thinking that how long a duration do you guys kind of set in your mind as far as um, the use of that plan, I
Like,
guess.
yeah, is there a point where it runs out?
Yeah, so we have there are points where it runs out, right? So again, it's kind of a supplement. Now we do know, statistic wise, and Don, this doesn't go bode well for myself or you, but as a male, once we hit that stage of life where we need a long-term care, it's about 2.2 years is on average, right? Nationwide, on average. It's not an exact science, it could be less or more, but 2.2 years where females are 3.7, right? So they they last longer than we do once
Uh,
once we get to that stage of life. So we can use those as barometers. I mean, when that's your average, that's a pretty good statistic. I mean, they've been collecting this data for years and years and years. So, but if you can also look at your family history,
Hmm.
right? And that kind of gives you a little bit of a barometer. Um, but yes, it is a plan that will be there, and you set it up for X amount of years, X amount per year. But as long as the money's there, like if you set up, let's say 300,000, let's say 100,000 a year, right? Just for easy math for 3 years. And you needed long-term care, but you've only spent 100 grand of it in 3 years. Well, you still got 200 grand to spend, so you can extend that out, right? Um, if you were to run out of your long-term care plan, like you used it all, you're being stubborn and you're winning that
You
race.
keep living, dang it, you know.
Yeah, keep living. Um, well, the whole purpose of this was to not touch your assets, right? Well, if
Right.
you
Yeah,
get to that
yeah.
point, you'll just have to, at that point, you would have to start touching your assets. But you've had
Right.
3 more years of growth, and there's all ways you can set it up that way.
Sure, sure.
If I decide to freeze myself, will it cover that?
Don't believe so.
Ah, any other thoughts? Do you
Well,
have?
another general question as far as the age of purchasing it,
Oh, yeah.
since Don's over 65, I'm
Yeah.
not yet, but how does that affect getting long-term care insurance?
Yeah, so I mean, a question that kind of goes along with that is, does everybody get approved for long-term care, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because you want it, do you get it? And the answer is no, unfortunately, right? You do go through an underwriting process. You have to be insurable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are benefits to applying earlier in life. There's
Mm-hmm.
cost benefits, right? And then there's insurability benefits. Under 50 years old, when you apply, you've got about 80% approval rating.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty good, right? That's pretty strong. And, just like any, in the life insurance world, age is your discount. Kind of the same thing in long-term care because they're playing the odds of you needing it, the older we get are better, so the cost goes up. So, I would say the earliest you'd want to maybe start looking into it would be mid 30s ish, right? I was like, why not 20s? It'd be even cheaper. Well, 20s, I mean, you're not even thinking about that yet, and you shouldn't be, right? You're just starting to get a job out of school, trying to get your life going, figure out your direction, and starting putting that money into your retirement plans. And yes, you should be doing that, right? Do not be looking at long-term care in your 20s. But once you get in your mid 30s, you start having a family, 40s, those are kind of the prime years. And that's for the really proactive people. I'll say
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of people doing it that age. It's
Mhm.
mostly, uh-oh, I need it, or my spouse needed it. Now I want to make sure I can get it. Well, not
Right.
saying you can't get it, but you're insured. The odds of being insurable later, as things start happening to us later in life, that insurability factor drops. And then if you do get through insurability, then the cost can go up, right?
Right.
So it's that it's that balance. Now,
Mm-hmm.
even if a certain plan might be too high in the budget scale, we can always just kind of tweak that a little bit
Mhm.
and get it down to what's comfortable or what's the most we can get for our budget, right? It's better to have something than nothing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that's the best part about customizing it. But yes, the earlier you plan for it, the less it costs you, and the better chance of being insurable.
Do the costs go up though as you age? I would imagine it does, like all other types of insurance.
So with New York Life, you lock in your insurability. So
Okay.
it's a set premium.
Okay.
Now, some of the inflation options you have, it's not something that's guaranteed, but if you choose to take inflation into consideration, it is set up front what percentage it would go up over certain periods of time, like the premium,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because just like oh, I keep using investments, but just like, anything the more you put into something, the more you get out of it, right?
Yeah.
So the more you fund something, the more growth it gets. It's the same way. So what they do with long-term care is they have these inflation options that you can click on that, and you can choose how much you want. You can spin the wheel and guess how much you think inflation might be, per year. Because if you think it's going to be really high, you can really get big increases. If you want to keep it low, you can get low increases. Um, but the only way that your premium would change is if you chose an inflation option to go up to help hopefully keep pace with inflation as best as
Oh,
possible.
okay. Okay. Yeah. So it's not like health insurance as you get older, you pay more to have it when you're in the
Correct. So the only difference is if you wait till you're older to try to get it, right,
Right,
that's
it's going to
higher
cost you
because
more.
then,
So there
yeah,
is that benefit of getting it
once you
for
lock it in,
under 50.
if you take
Right.
advantage of it, you're good to go.
Sure.
Where were you when I turned 50? I'm 67 now, so it's gonna,
Because how long has long-term care insurance been around?
It's been around for about 20 years,
Okay.
but it didn't really, I mean, it got in the market and then it got really hot for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of, as these companies started, um, I guess, doing away with that program, people got a bad taste in their mouth about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now the money they were putting into the plan, that plan didn't exist anymore with that company.
Yeah.
Now, over the past decade, we've had about 8 companies that are pretty, and they're all pretty strong. If you look at any of these companies' financial ratings, you can have pretty good confidence that
I'll be
you're
around.
not going to be in that situation. They
Yeah.
kind of that market kind of evened itself out.
Okay. It sounds like a whole bunch of companies jumped on the bandwagon and then
They
they
did.
couldn't pay up is basically
Yeah, they bit off more than they could chew, so to speak. Of course, nobody was anticipating the cost of medical care going up as it has. It's been a little crazy.
someone who's worked in healthcare all these years that's
Yeah.
is going to go up and things are going to change.
Oh
And
yeah.
well, it's good to know there's been improvements made and that things, yes, because like I said, I've been in healthcare for 33 years, so I remember when it kind of came about, and that's why my parents asked me about it, was probably 15, 20 years ago, easily. And so it might not have been the best thing at that time because who
Yeah.
knows who they would have gotten the plan with.
Well, the people that did have it and the companies that stayed around, they've always been
Oh yeah,
like much, I don't say, I guess, stress-free,
sure.
happier. Their spouse lived longer because of it, uh, with support, with help, versus just kind of having to. Because even if you say, yeah, I'm gonna take care of my parents, well, that could be 20 years from now. Well, I'm
Yeah.
20 years older now. My physical abilities aren't what they are now.
Sure.
Right? It's a whole different. It kind of hits you all at once, and you're like, oh God, like I wasn't
Yeah.
prepared for all this.
Right. Yeah, I've worked in geriatric care for years, so I think about things that other people don't. I think about, oh, the house has steps. What about when I can't do that? Right? Most people don't think through that kind of thing, but because I've worked in this world, I think about that. And what a lot of people don't understand, a skilled nursing facility is a healthcare facility versus an assisted living, and that were my questions were. Like, I know if you exhaust all your money, Medicaid, you can be on Medicaid, which pretty much you drain your money, and there are
Yeah, your
places
final
that will,
destination there would be Medicaid, but I mean,
yeah,
we
then
don't
you're
have to get into
limited.
specifics today, but you got to sell pretty much everything you
Yeah,
own to get the poverty level so that Medicaid will pay for it. And at that
Mm.
point, now you got the government controlling your care and
and
not
there's
you.
only certain places you can go,
Yeah,
and
and from my experience, you always have better look out for yourself than someone else, so to
well,
Yeah.
speak.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the places I've worked, they only have so many Medicaid beds, and there are the nicest facilities either don't have any or they have a very limited amount, and yeah, but you pretty much have to expend all your money. You have to turn your Social Security over to them. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's not. Yeah, you don't want to be there.
it's not ideal. Some people, it happens that way, and at least they have that. But most of us, yeah, we want to.
Yeah, if you have the ability, because not everybody, if you have the ability to avoid that scenario, then I would recommend going that way versus the other.
Sure. I
Well, oh, go ahead.
I would, a lot of people like our podcast, we kind of focus on caring for aging parents and thinking about the whole sandwich generation as we're getting older, really, but looking at our parents and their care, and we might still have children at home. We do as well. We actually still have a 17-year-old. Our other kids are in their 20s. But so we see what our parents go through, and it's like, okay, what about us? What do we want for us? And I imagine there's lots of people, mostly in my generation, but even into the baby boomers like Don is, they're thinking about it because of watching their parents go through
Hmm.
something.
Yeah, and most people that come to me with their hand raised for long-term care, I was ask them, so why did you raise your hand? Like, what have you experienced? And because that's what kind of that's the ticker, right?
Hmm.
They're like, man. I just went through it, can I prevent my children from going through it? Right.
Hmm.
And I mean, yeah, and you can, and you can completely like customize it to your liking. Because, you know, I get asked a lot, what do you say to somebody that says, oh, my kids are going to take care of me? And I say, that's wonderful, right? That is great. The fact that your kids are willing to take care of you is a beautiful thing, right? They must really love you. I was like, but the one thing that, you got to ask yourself a couple questions. This is you personally. You got to talk to yourself about this. You
Hmm.
know, do they know that's the plan,
Yeah, that was my big question.
right? Have you told them that in that situation, they are the ones that are going to be giving you care? Right? And two, if that is the case, is that going to take time away from their work or their own family they've grown?
Hmm.
Right? Is that going to put a financial burden on them because of that, whether it's loss of income or having to pay out of pocket, right? Because maybe you don't have it.
Hmm.
Is it going to be a mental or physical burden on them? Right? And after you've answered all those questions, then you just got to ask yourself, are you okay with that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
People can make,
that's the like people don't like we expect. I mean, even I think to my oh yeah, we want our kid. We took care of our kids when they were little. They should take care of us when we're older, right? It's just natural. Like that's just our. But we don't go deeper into that thought process.
right,
Yeah.
You think
Yeah.
deeper, you're like, oh wow, maybe that's not what I want for them or the way I want it to go,
right.
right? And maybe it is. Right? Again, there's no right or wrong answer, but you owe it to yourself to dig a little bit deeper
Hmm.
just to make sure. But make sure that like it's very beneficial to have a written plan. A lot of
Hmm.
people will tell me they've got their long-term care plan all set up, and I say, is it written down? They're like, no. I'm like, well, then it's not, if it ain't documented, it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like if you get to that point, you want everybody on board because you may not be cognitively there to
Hmm.
to execute it the way you wanted. But if you had that
Sure.
conversation years in advance with everybody involved, everybody knows the playbook, then you get the care you were expecting
It makes a
Yeah.
big
or wanting.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know when my dad, we remember thinking, okay, what would my dad have wanted? His dementia, he was lucid at times and other times he wasn't. Um, but I did, stop and think about that because some people also say, oh, just put me in a home if I get like that. And they
Right.
might not realize what that means or what that looks like. My grandmother, I mean, she lived to be 85, almost 86, and didn't want to be a burden. So she went to a nursing home, and it didn't take long to say, that's not what I want. And
Yeah.
luckily, they had saved their money and kind of never gone anywhere and did anything. Um, so they had the money to pay for a caregiver to come in the house. But if, that had not been an option, she wouldn't have been able to change her mind like that. But yeah, that having those conversations, that's kind of what our whole podcast is about. People don't communicate this until something happens. If you've cared for your parents, at least it gives you that one up of, okay, I've seen what can happen. We need to make, a plan ahead of time, because people don't realize the cost of care and different care looks like different things. I work in independent living, which means it's not a healthcare facility. There's nobody around the clock to care for you, but it's a lot cheaper than assisted living or other higher levels of care. And so there are people that are there because they can't afford anything else. And sometimes the family knows it, but they don't have the money either. And so they fall a lot. They wind up in the hospital a lot. It's not an ideal living for them. Um, because, yeah, you can find some place to live, but what's the quality of your life going to be? Your chance of injury, not having the support you need. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if only money grew on trees, right? If that's the case. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
and you bring up a good, topic about cost,
Hmm.
right? People don't understand the severity of it, right?
Hmm.
So, like here in Charlotte, and we've got a really cool tool here with New York Life that we can pick a state and an area of living and it'll pull us the averages. But
Okay.
since we live here in Charlotte, I just, if you look at Charlotte for an example, I know maybe not everybody lives in Charlotte that views or
Hmm.
listens to the podcast, but in Charlotte, and I looked at like a 1 year, just for 1 year
Mm-hmm.
expense, right? If you did home care,
Mm-hmm.
right, where most of us would prefer to be at the house, you're looking for 1 year, and depends on the level of care you get, but you're looking at anywhere from about, these again, these are averages, not
Mm-hmm.
precise numbers. But on the lower end, you're looking at about 68,000 all the way up to 280 grand a year.
Mm-hmm.
That depends. If you got like a home health aide, that'll keep you down on the lower end. But if you got the full like registered nurse coming in all on around the clock, it can get it can get pretty expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Assisted living, 1 bedroom, about an average of 75 grand here in the Charlotte area. And then, for a skilled nursing home, private room, right? It's not sharing with somebody you don't know, but a private room, about $119,000 a year on average, right?
Hmm.
So when you say, oh, I'll just put me in a home, well, for how long? And how are
Yeah.
we gonna pay for it? Because, 100 grand times 3, 4, 5 years, I mean, that's a big chunk of change. And that, again, if you don't have it personally, it's coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's
No.
either family members, or you're gonna have to go to to the government route.
Right. And then you literally
You don't have a say at that point.
you'll have
Here's your
no
option.
nothing to pass down to your children because you literally exhaust all your expenses
Yep.
doing that. Yeah, we live up in Salisbury now, so costs up here I think are a little less maybe, but
Mhm.
I know it varies. As we were looking for my dad for he needed memory care and assisted living, which is the
Sure.
higher end of assisted living care. We managed to find him a place for about 7,000 a month, but he did have an increase in level of care that bumped that up. And I know from looking at other places that assisted living care like that can cost 12,000 a month in the Charlotte
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. Again, that's an average. So, you can have much higher. You can have, I would say there's more on the higher end than the lower end, but it is an average. And another, we've been doing a lot of talking about, senior stuff, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
get to the age, but if you got a long-term care plan in effect, and, you might have a long-term care event in your 50s,
Yep.
and it might just last a few months. Like, let's say you had like let's say you had to get a new knee, a knee operation, right? Well, you can't transfer yourself out of bed, right? You can't dress yourself, so you can technically, with a long-term care plan, you can use some of those funds to pay the difference of what maybe if you do or don't have private insurance
Okay.
would take care of. So, I'd say more times than not we're using it later in life, but there are instances that it can be used before that, because there are long-term
Interesting.
care events that happen, right?
Sure.
People have to go through chemo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to beat that battle. And sometimes you got to be out of work, and you got to go through care. And there's sometimes you got to pay for that. And you can utilize your long-term care plan for that. So there's a bunch of ways you can use it.
I'm curious how that affects, you live through that event. Does that lower the amounts you have when you are older?
It would lower the amounts you would have when you are older.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side is, though, you have time to recover.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Sure.
what I mean, I don't mean that just physically. I mean, hey, if you got to use it, now you got another 30 years of life.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even put dollar values on that, right?
Yeah.
But the memories and stuff, friends, family, and the impact you can have out there on
Sure.
the world. But, you know, yeah, you might have used it because you needed to. It's certainly better than going in debt, that you got to dig a hole out of. But
Mm-hmm.
then you can, at that point, now you've got another 30 years I won't say working, but you've got more time to get income and put that in different spots to recover that, to recoup that.
Sure. And we talk so much about seniors, but because I've worked in rehab for so long, things can happen to people at younger ages. I know people who've had strokes in their 30s, and by the time they're 60, they need long term care and they may last another 25 years. Don had a major heart attack. I mean, at 52. So, people could be in a car accident, have a spinal cord injury. So I'm just thinking about all the
Yeah,
different aspects of
the
times that could be
possibilities are
used.
kind of limitless. As
Yeah.
you know, you just mentioned off a few of them, but
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, if you get to your 40s, I'm 47, so we'll just use me. If you get to your 40s and you don't know anybody that has had some sort of event,
Hmm.
medical event, then you don't know enough people. because it's just
They're from another planet or something. Yeah.
or if you don't know somebody that knew somebody, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
7 degrees of separation, or if you don't know somebody that knows somebody that had a long term, like they had to take care of somebody that had a long term care event. I mean, it happens all the time,
Sure.
right? And we don't even think about it.
No, so even if you don't anticipate using it when you're 50 and that's when you take the plan out, you could wind up needing it sooner.
Yeah, you do never know. My wife, kind of her second, I guess her second job is she loves working with elderly people. She just does. And so she got a job helping going to assisted living facilities.
Hmm.
And her primary role when she goes there, she's got a few of her clients. There's people that are early onsets and some, dementia wise, starting to lose their mind a little bit. She just makes
Hmm.
sure they get their medication on time.
Hmm.
That's it. Just make sure they don't forget. But she did have one client that was outside of that facility that was in her 50s and had had a stroke.
Hmm.
And she lost the use of like kind of the left side of her body. So she was
Hmm.
going over there just kind of helping her do daily things. Right. Her husband worked or works still, but they
Hmm.
still needed that and their plan paid for it.
Ah,
Right. So it was just like 3 times a week, 2 hours a day. Just go over in the morning. Maybe she just needed some laundry done or cook some breakfast or who knows what needed to be
right.
done. It was just like, hey, but they had a plan and it helped
Helped pay
facilitate
for it.
that.
Is there a certain period of time before you can utilize the money when you purchase a plan, and does that vary?
No, you could literally sign up for a plan one day, let's say whatever your plan, let's say again, $100,000 a year, right? Whatever that premium is for whatever age you are when you got it. And then the next month you got a long-term care event, you've only put whatever your first premium into it, you got the $100,000.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
the risk the insurance company takes,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's how they kind of do figure out whatever the premium is going to be. But
Right.
that's the risk. They're willing to risk the money to help them out. So that's kind of where insurance comes into play.
Sure.
Like
And
it's
which is
that
why they
weird
don't,
saying, we hope we never need it, but we're sure
right.
glad we have it when we do.
Let me
Like
do.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a big
Which is
difference.
also why they don't approve everybody, obviously, right? Because
They want to make sure they're around for 180 years, so to speak. They got to be good at risk management. They do have to be good at risk management.
sure,
Um, but at the same time, they're very good at doing that.
sure. Is
Well,
there,
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
go ahead, Don.
Well, I was just going to say, I can guess what these tips might be, but are there any tips that you might want to give to somebody that's thinking about going into that and doing that?
The only tip I would say and this sounds really, I don't know, salesy, but pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah.
It's free to fiddle with the figures.
Hmm.
It costs you nothing. Like it costs you $0 to sit with a licensed agent here at New York Life and create a plan for you or answer all your questions and then
Hmm.
maybe develop a plan for you and show you what your premium options are. It costs you nothing to do that. Zero. All the work we do there is pro bono, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
If you decide, hey, I want to go with this plan, at that point, once you get your plan in place, then New York Life, again, I'm speaking just for our company, but at that point, New York Life pays us because you took advantage, like you're now paying premiums to the
Sure,
insurance company.
sure.
So until you actually decide if it's right for you or if it's in the budget, depending on your plan, until you actually get to the finish line and say, yeah, let's do it, we're here for you. We're here to help you out and educate you.
And like, we've kind of centered around this whole idea of talking about it, right? We don't know, we can't make assumptions. Maybe we think we can't afford it, and maybe we can. And
Yeah, or if anything, if your kids is the plan, let them know they're the plan. They might have they may have a different sentiment about that,
sure,
right? And at
Yeah.
that point, you may have to rethink your plan, right?
right,
Just because you want
Yeah.
them to doesn't mean they're, physically able or
right. And who knows what,
who knows
maybe
what
they
they
are
got
able
going on.
right now and willing, but things could change for them too. So
Yeah, things
You
happen
got to
all the
have you got
time.
to have plan B,
plan
probably
C and
even
plan
C,
D.
all that
Yeah.
too. So,
And none of those plans we like to talk about, but
Yeah,
they
but they
yeah.
happen.
can happen. They sure do. Yeah, I love that. And reminding people you can find out. You don't have to commit to doing it.
Just
And
know knowledge is power,
it
right?
is.
And even if it's something that maybe not in the budget now, maybe it'll be in the budget in a year or two, but at least you know it's available.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
may have something to work towards, or,
sure.
hey, depending on what they may, hey, once I pay off, this debt, I'll take that and put it toward, like, there's just so many different, at least though, knowledge is power.
Hmm. So true. So true.
So just we'll put this on the description, but is there anything in particular where they can reach you? How the best way to get a hold of you and find out more about this?
Yeah, I think you'll have it on the slide, but you've got my cell phone number
Hmm.
and my as my Baltimore number still, so my bio is true, and you've got my email address. So phone's always on, call, text, email. Um, if I don't answer, I may be with a client, or if it's really late in the morning, I might be sleeping, but I will get back with you. Right. But those are my personal contacts. So
Okay.
you just have a general question. Uh,
Okay.
Want to set up a meeting with me? I'll be more than happy to do that. I can meet in person if you're local. I can do Zoom if you're far,
Okay.
right? And we've got agents all across the United States. So if
I was
you'd
going to say, yeah, because
rather,
you're not probably licensed in all the states. So if our
I'm not
viewers are
licensed in all
listening,
the states, but I can get licensed in any state. I just got to
oh,
take my
okay.
steps. But some people want to work with somebody local, and that's fine,
Right.
right?
And
I'm totally fine with that. That's how you create a relationship, for the future, and
Mm.
and you want somebody to call, right? So, if you're setting up, if you're being proactive and you're setting up long-term care planning, let's say in your 40s,
mhm,
right? And you may not need it for another 30 years. But now we're in that time, it's 30 years later and stuff's starting to happen. Well, at least with New York Life, I can speak with, we've got a care planning service team. So one, you can call your agent, but
mhm,
two, we also get you to people that's what they do,
mm.
is they say, all right, what's the situation? What are we looking? And they can look in your local area and they'll reach out for you. And
Oh,
they'll
wow.
like
To assist you with that.
they'll help you they'll take a lot of stress off your plate.
Mm, that's good to know. So people can find New York Life
Yeah.
anywhere in the country to get services they need. Because, like we said, viewers could be listening from all areas of the country. Um, so wonderful. Thank you for all this information. I feel so much more educated. And I imagine our viewers do as well, that it's such a something that's overlooked.
Well,
Um,
there's so many questions. I mean, we've got a 67-page slide presentation on long-term care. We
I
go
can
on like these
imagine.
big presentations. So,
Sure.
a lot of times people have a question or two pop up in their head, like while they're listening or afterwards.
Hmm.
Don't hesitate well, they can either reply back to you guys to then relay to me, or if they got my info, just shoot me an email, shoot me a text. It's very easy to answer the questions.
Sure. It's always nice to have someone to talk to in person. I think a lot of people are starting to feel that way with so many computer automated things, that, yeah, having a real person to
I'd
help you
much
through
rather.
this.
I'm kind of old school that way. I mean, yes, do I use all the AI stuff to get simple questions answered? Yes, but when it comes to things like this, I mean, there's
Yeah,
questions for questions, and there's a bunch of different scenarios, and it is so much easier just to converse and get the answer like right then and there.
sure,
And
sure,
if they don't know the answer, be like, hey, great question. Let me find the answer for you, and I'll get back with you. It's just a level of comfort and convenience.
sure. Thank you so much for joining us today, Scott. We really enjoyed this conversation, and I
Yeah, thanks for
imagine
having me.
our viewers do well. And we might invite you back, because there's
Yeah,
so
please
much
do.
concepts with this. So thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of Focused Healthy Family. Again, you can see all this information, um, visually on the podcast, whether you're listening to it or watching it on YouTube. We appreciate all of our listeners. We'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to leave a comment, a thought, like the podcast, and subscribe and share it with other people, because obviously you might know somebody else who could really benefit from this information so valuable today and with any other podcast you listen to. If you're finding it difficult to stay calm and you're feeling panicked, especially if you're listening to this thinking, oh my gosh, I need long-term life insurance, long-term care insurance, and I can't afford it. What am I going to do? Well, be sure to explore on our website Don's EFT Discovery Series. So looking at EFT and help can calm your nerves to manage all the stressors of life. Don says people often tell him that they think EFT is weird, but after working with him for several sessions, they say, wow, look what tapping has done for me. If you're navigating the challenges of caring for an aging loved one, like we discuss most topics and we've discussed today, be sure to check out our senior care page. Don and I are resources for people to connect with people here like Scott to help get that support and care that you need from all the different podcasts. We've covered many topics all around this area, but there's so many aspects to helping care for aging loved ones. You can find out tips, caregiver insights, and more on our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can find us on social media, Focused Healthy Family, Instagram, Focused Healthy Family 1, YouTube at Focused Healthy Family, and Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. Join us every Thursday when we air a new podcast. And you can go directly to focusedhealthyfamilypodcast.com. You can also find us anywhere you get a podcast or listen to. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.